Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1177B, and today's date is January 13th, 2017, and the title of the episode is Something Very Strange Just Happened Days Before the Inauguration. Let's get into the economic collapse, political and geopolitical news. Now, 6 years ago, Obama signed the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act into law. Since then, Americans have seen their premiums increase, a dozen nonprofit insurers have closed their doors, and a number of people on the Medicaid rolls, well, that has been expanded. And remember, when all this started, Congress was really not allowed to read it. And remember, Pelosi was out there saying, you must pass it first, and then you can read it. And of course, they said this was going to be completely affordable. It's going to be great for everyone, and don't worry about it. And of course, the government officials, they exempted themselves. Remember back when the staffers said, whoa, wait a minute, this is too expensive, we can't afford this. Obama came in, took his pen and said, you know something, you're exempted too. Don't worry about it. Now, if this insurance is so great and it's meant for everyone, the people, because it's a benefit to the people, remember, it's not just one little group and the rest have to suffer. It doesn't work that way. If you're going to do something, it has to be a benefit to the people. And we could see already from what they've done, it isn't a benefit to the people because why did they exempt themselves? Why did they exempt the staffers if everything is so cheap and great? Why didn't they drop their government insurance and take Obamacare? You notice how they didn't do that. And remember the whole thing with the healthcare.gov website. And they said, oh, that's only going to cost $800 million. And it was a complete disaster. Well, it turned out it cost $2.1 billion. Now, we hear this number out there where they're saying 20 million people have joined Obamacare. Look how great it is. It has insured all of these people. And if we repeal Obamacare, it's going to be a disaster. Now, remember, there's always winners and losers. And you know, everyone has a different story. And I see it all over social media where everyone's coming up with these stories that Obamacare saved my life. For every story that's out there that says this, you can show another story that says I couldn't afford Obamacare and, you know, I had to pay a huge amount of hospital bills because I couldn't afford the premium and now I'm bankrupt. So when we look at this, we have to look at what are they talking about when they say 20 million people? Well, you have to remember, out of the 20 million, 8.9 million, well, that's Medicaid. So you really can't count that as, oh, look, all these people decided to go on Obamacare. Well, that's really Medicaid. It was already there. They just loosened the restrictions and made it Obamacare compliant, and these 8.9 people came on board. So if you subtract that, then what do you have left? 11.1 million or so? Well, we have to go back in time. Remember, the 11 million, out of those people, there were those who already had insurance. Remember they got the cancellation letters saying that you're not Obamacare compliant? Now remember, they already had insurance. And what they had to do after they got canceled was go on to Obamacare. Well, that was 4.7 million people. So if we take 4.7 million and we subtract it from 11.1 million, what do we have left? Like 6.4 million or so? 6.4 million people actually bought into Obamacare. Now, the question is, how many people didn't take Obamacare? Well, from the tax records, those people who said it's too expensive, and this was back in 2015 before premiums really started to skyrocket, 7.5 million people couldn't afford Obamacare in 2015, and they took the penalty. So you have 6.4 that went on there, and many of them are subsidized. Remember, this is the poor, and 7.5 million couldn't afford it. And the rest of the country, well, they were already on their corporate insurance, so they didn't have to do anything. Coming into this year, and of course the tax records aren't out just yet, it's going to be worse because what happened to the premiums? They skyrocketed. So when they say this is great for everyone, and of course I see a lot of people talking about it, and of course these people have insurance from their jobs or they're school teachers and they have their insurance from there, so they really didn't know anything about Obamacare. They've always had what they had. Nothing's changed for them. And if we look at Obamacare's, or actually Affordable Care Act co-ops, and remember, it's not affordable at all. If we look at the co-ops, what happened there? Well, out of the 23, 12 went belly up. They went bankrupt. And it cost $1.2 billion. That's how much it was lost in this. And there's other co-ops saying they can barely get by. And what happened was when these co-ops and exchanges went bust, the choices in states, well, you didn't have 3 choices. You didn't have 2 choices. You only had 1 choice. And what we're seeing right now is that there are a lot of states out there where you really have fewer insurance options. 22 states and the District of Columbia have fewer insurers offering coverage on the exchanges in 2016. Almost half of the country. So when they say this was the best thing since sliced bread, no. There's always winners, there's always losers. But if you're talking that this is something good for the people, it just can't be for the small number of individuals. And, you know, I have nothing against those who are poor, those who can't make it, who needed insurance. But when you look at the numbers and you look at what's really going on, the majority of the people, they can't afford it. And yes, some of them are sick. Some of them have pre-existing conditions. They don't get subsidized. And that number is growing larger and larger as these premiums go up. I know that there's a company, I'm not going to mention any names, where most of the employees, and think about what the companies got out of this and the insurance companies got out of this, where these individuals, they're low-paying employees, they're low-paid employees, so the company doesn't have to lay out for insurance. So this helps the company where they don't have to pay for insurance. The burden then goes on to the individual, and those individuals get subsidized, and they have health insurance that way, instead of the company giving them health insurance. Then you have the middle management, where they're saying, we don't want to pay for your insurance, and middle management says, well, yes, we're above the threshold, we don't get subsidized, but we don't make enough money to pay for these $1,900 premiums each month. And that is a problem, because we see the majority of America, they're middle class. And it's hurting the middle class, the engine that drives America. So yes, there's always going to be winners and losers, but when we look at this, it has to benefit the majority of the people. And I'm not even going to get into the penalties, which was imposed on the people. So what we're seeing is, who are really the winners? Well, the very poor, they made out on this deal. Insurance companies made out on this deal. Pharmaceutical companies made out on this deal. Companies that supplied medical equipment made out on this deal. Who are the losers? All those people that lost their insurance, who had to pay more. All those people who can't afford the insurance because they don't have the funds. They're not making enough. And there are millions and millions of those people who just can't get insurance because the premiums are too high. Think about it. 7.5 million took the penalty because they couldn't afford Obamacare. In 2016, the insurance premiums skyrocketed. So that number is most likely going to go even higher. And actually, already during this 2016 year, those individuals that applied to Obamacare, 25% had to drop out because they just couldn't make the payments anymore. So it's a complete disaster any way you look at it. Now, Guccifer was out there, and this is Guccifer 2.0, and he is slamming the intelligence community, saying that this is completely fake. He says the malware that is being used, that they have in their reports, saying this is linked to Russia, he's saying this malware, it's all over the internet. Anybody can get it. Anybody can use it. He says what they did was they took their report and they put it together around the malware and the IP address to point to Russia. And that's how they created it. And actually, if you look at it, and we discussed it many, many times, that is exactly what they did. Now, Trump is out there, and he's saying that he's going to release the full report within 90 days. And we're going to see exactly what happened. So he's probably very confident that all of it is completely fake. And when it's all out there and the evidence is out there, everyone's going to see that they lied. It's going to be a truth bomb. Now, the Obama administration just did another crazy thing as Obama is leaving office. He just handed more power to the intelligence agencies. And Snowden is out there slamming this, saying that Obama just expanded the surveillance powers for the intelligence agencies. And what they actually did was Obama created an executive order which will allow the NSA to share the private data it collects with all 16 agencies of the United States intelligence community. The 23-page outline of the new procedures lifts previous limits placed on the way information was filtered before being disseminated to individual agencies. Now, he's handing this to Trump, which is very interesting that he decided to do this all of a sudden. If you notice, he's continually doing these things to make Trump's presidency very uncomfortable. Now, all agencies will have the freedom to dig through raw signal intelligence information under the new procedures. So what this means is that the NSA is going to be handing out raw intercepts to other agencies where they don't need a warrant, they don't need anything like that. Well, they really do, but they're saying that they don't, and they're going to be looking through the emails, the texts, and everything else. And you can see that this was a play right before Obama leaves office. Now, out in Afghanistan, we see the United States government central bankers, they have been footing the bill of about $300 million in salaries to ghost soldiers. And what we're seeing right now is that the United States is continually paying unverified employees out in Afghanistan. Where are these funds actually going? The Special Inspector General for the Afghanistan Restructuring, John Sopko, is once again warning about the long-standing problems of corruption in Afghanistan and the amount of U.S. reconstruction aid disappearing down black holes over the course of years. And it's the ghost soldier phenomenon, where these soldiers don't actually exist, but somebody is making money off of this. This is also going to fictional police, teachers, and other government officials. And the U.S. taxpayer, well, they're paying the salaries. Where is this going? Now, is this the trillions of dollars the Pentagon is missing? Over the many, many years, I mean, this is just part of it. But we're starting to get a big picture of what's really going on here. Now, Russia is going to stop the agreement with Ukraine on nuclear power plant construction. They decided that, you know what, we're done here, and we're not going to be building the third and fourth reactor in Ukraine. And they decided to end this. We see out in Libya, the National Salvation Government Forces, they have seized at least 3 ministries in Libya, in the capital. And we see that the leader of the group confirmed that his forces now have control of the Ministry of Defense, Labor, and the Martyrs and the Wounded Ministry, which looks after the families of the aforementioned. He also declared himself the Prime Minister of Libya. Now, of course, the UN-backed government is saying, this is ridiculous. We're the recognized government. We don't know who you are. And again, it doesn't matter who recognizes you. It depends on who the people want as their government. And the United States and the coalition forces and the UN are trying to convince everyone by saying, this is who we picked. This is the recognized government. we don't care what the people of Libya want. This is what we want, so we're recognizing them. That's actually what they're doing. Now, Erdogan is out there saying that his soldiers are going to stay in Cyprus indefinitely. There is no discussion on their withdrawal whatsoever. He says Turkey will remain in Cyprus, and that's it. We're never going to leave. Russia and Turkey, well, they agreed to coordinate strikes in Syria, so they are working together now, hitting the Islamic State, hitting the terrorist groups. And we can see that Turkey, Erdogan is still a dictator. Let's just be clear about this. But it looks like Putin might have blackmailed Erdogan a little bit of exposing him as working with the Islamic State with the oil convoys. And Erdogan saw the writing on the wall saying, okay, if Russia's coming in, the Islamic State is really doomed inside of Syria. The United States is fighting a losing battle with their paid mercenaries. And we really want that deal with Russia for the Turkish Stream pipeline. And we can see why Erdogan says, I need to look after myself. And we know what happened after that happened. The United States had the coup d'etat. They had all these events occurring in Turkey, these false flag events. And we can see at this point that Turkey is getting ready to remove the U.S. from the Incirlik air base, saying there's no purpose for them to be there. Now, Syria right now, they are building up their troops. They're going into the other parts of Aleppo, and they are building their forces up to have this major offensive. Syria is out there saying, we are warning Israel right now not to strike Syria again, because what happened was Israeli jets carried out airstrikes on a military airport west of Damascus. Now, again, this is an act of war. Another country flying into another country's airspace and destroying infrastructure, killing individuals. This is an act of war. And of course, Syria right now is saying they're going to retaliate against Israel. Do I think it's going to happen? Most likely not, because this would actually start World War III at this point. But again, I don't know what happened to the S-400, S-300 missile systems inside of Syria. Were they not turned on? Were they not in this area? But we can see right now that they're most likely going to place them in this area now. We see the United States government central bankers, well, they are going after Assad, and it's all out. They're using the UN report. They've named Assad as using chemical weapons, and it seems like we're back to that same exact fake story where they're saying that he's been using chemical weapons and he's responsible for all of it, when we know for a fact it has been the terrorist groups. It's been the Islamic State. It's been the moderate rebels. It's been Al-Qaeda. Why would Assad use chemical weapons on his own people? It makes no sense. It's like George Washington fighting the revolution against the British, turning around and firing the cannons on his own people. Assad needs the support of his people. He brought Russia in to help with the terrorist situation. Why would he even need chemical weapons at this point? He wouldn't. If you notice, he cooperated back in 2013 and turned in all his chemical weapons. Said, okay, we don't need them. And what the U.S. had to do is they had to figure out a way to continually blame him for the chemical weapons. So they came up with chlorine gas attacks. And it was found out that, yes, the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, the moderate rebels, they were using chlorine, they were producing chlorine, they were shipping chlorine in from Iraq. And it turns out that's where all this was coming from. Now, the White House suddenly released a strategy for dealing with a catastrophic meteor impact, which is quite strange of why they decided to do this. I mean, does the White House know something that the rest of us do not? So as the Obama administration once again closes down and he gets ready to move out, the White House suddenly released a major document that details a multi-pronged strategy for dealing with the threat of a catastrophic meteor impact. So what has changed? All of the things that the White House could be focusing on, why this at this point in time? Now, we see NASA continually is assuring the American people in the world that there is no imminent threat from any meteor whatsoever. But the White House decided to put this out there. And this is something that we need to be aware of because it is kind of strange. Now, we know the inauguration is coming up on January 20th. And something very strange just happened. Actually, it doesn't even make any sense. Because in the middle of this and all this planning for the inauguration, they decided to let the chief of the National Guard go. The individual who's been planning all of this. Major General Errol R. Schwartz, who heads the D.C. National Guard and is an integral part of overseeing the inauguration, has been ordered removed from command effective January 20th at 12:01 p.m., just as Donald Trump is sworn in as president. Now, Major General Errol R. Schwartz's departure will come in the midst of the presidential ceremony, classified as a national special security event, and while thousands of his troops are deployed to help protect the nation's capital, he won't be there. The timing is extremely unusual, Schwartz said. He says he doesn't even understand this. Now, there's about 5,000 unarmed troops that are sent in from across the country to help with the inauguration. And all of this is very strange because we know there's going to be a lot of protesters. We know a lot of these groups are saying they're going to try to push rioting. They're going to destroy the city. They're going to try to stop the inauguration. And we know that the elite, the establishment, this is their plan. They want this to spread. They want riots to happen. And that's why most likely they put in agent provocateurs. We've seen this before. And what they do is they have these individuals with black masks, all dressed in black. And they come in and they start throwing things. They start destroying things. And their job is to get the crowd all riled up to join in. We saw this in Ferguson. We saw this in Baltimore. We saw it in many different areas. And they most likely are going to try to do this. Now, I don't know how big these crowds are going to be because when we look at the protests during the election and we saw how many people were protesting, there weren't really that many people. But we'll have to see how big and how large the crowds are. And we'll have to watch to see if they can get this started because what they really want to do is they want to get everyone all riled up. They want people to start to destroy things. They want people to start rioting, and they really want this to spread across the country, to shut everything down. And we can see that this is a very strange occurrence, letting the individual who's planning everything, letting him go at this juncture. And we can see right now, this most likely is the plan of the deep state, the elite, to shut the whole thing down. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.